Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost, and it's Friday. It's April 7th. It's Good Friday, everybody. So those of you who celebrate, have a happy Good Friday. I don't think Good Fridays are happy, but and also have a happy Passover for those of you who are Jewish. And this is our 150th consecutive show. We started doing these back in April 17th, 2020, as a little response to something you may have heard of called COVID. And we had to find a way to get through this shutdown, the quarantine. I still look back at this and I go, I can't believe they actually put us into quarantine. Do you all remember, like, when they said you were going into quarantine, we all went, they don't really mean that, do they? Well, they meant it. So here we are, like 2.5 years later, and our conversations at first were about community and about trying to keep people sane while they were in isolation. And then little by little, we've been transitioning into what resembles the live world. Again, something I say every week. I know that COVID isn't as dangerous for most people as it once was. Now we have vaccines, we have treatments, we have all sorts of things. Still not a bad idea to be conscious and to be careful, because although you may not be getting COVID and you may not be susceptible, there may be people around you that are susceptible to it. And so let's remember that we're on a very small planet, and we all have to really take care of each other. So I'm saying that in a period in our history where we have never been so much at each other's throats, but that's politics. We're not here for politics today. We're here for art. I want you to know that I have been working on getting one of our guests on this show, or at least to TRU, for 20 years. I don't know how long it's been, Rich. It's been like, I send you emails. It's like I must have sent you like dozens of emails at this point. You're in our sort of so-called relationship at this point.
But we made it.
You made it today. I'm so excited that you're here today. I really am. I've admired this theater company for a long time. Sometimes it's often felt like the only game in town in terms of offering opportunities to BIPOC artists of color, African American, African Black. It was hard to find opportunities, and Crossroads, I think, has filled a huge need in our culture and in our community. And I want to bring in both Rick Kahn, who is one of the founding artistic director of Crossroads Theatre, which is across the river in New Jersey. It's not so far away for us. And Monica Weeks, who is the director of operations and marketing. And I'm hoping that we're going to learn a little bit more about the specifics, the history of Crossroads, why you do what you do, and how did you manage to do it successfully when so many other people tried and didn't last like you. How long have you been doing this now, Rick? How long has Crossroads been around?
Long time.
There's a specific answer for you. Okay.
Well, I mean, we started. Well, gosh, I mean, early 78 was when we first opened our doors, and then from there we just, kept on moving.
And actually, you had some friends of mine who were involved in the founding story. What was Eric Krebs' role? How did he work with you?
Yeah, Eric. Well, Eric founded the George Street Playhouse, and the George Street Playhouse was the professional theater at the time. So when my partner and I, Lee Richardson, came out of Mason Gross School of the Arts, there was this feeling like a lot of artists wanted to stay in New Brunswick and create work and do work. And Eric had already started the George Street Playhouse 5 years before that. So what I wanted to do was get him to do Black theater. And one of the things he told me in that meeting was, well, I don't know that there's an audience out there. And I said, well, let me show you. And that's kind of how it got started. We were able to get funding to start the theater. We were able to prove that there was an audience out there. But it took a lot of work. And Eric was right there with us all along. And eventually, by the early 80s. I think it was, no, in 1980, we went out on our own. So we were under the umbrella of George Street Playhouse for 2 years before we said, okay, it's time for us to do it ourselves.
But it's hilarious that your original intent was to get him to produce the theater. So eventually, we always realize that.
Well, it was not
that we have to make things happen ourselves. I mean, this is what we talk about in TRU all the time.
Yeah, no, it was not about. I'm sorry, Bob. It was not about getting him to produce a theater. But Lee and I were actors. We wanted a role at George Street Playhouse in a play, and we happened to be doing this piece called Zizwe Banzi is Dead, which was during the anti-apartheid movement.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were trying to get him to hire us to do this. From that point on, it went into other things, but a lot of people think, wow, Crossroads started in order to make a big splash politically, but that's not true. We were just actors wanting to do our work.
But it's interesting because you had an intention, you put it out there, and the universe basically said to you, "You're going to make it happen." And I'm sure that when you first had the idea, it never occurred to you that you would be where you are today. The same reason for me. I mean, as a playwright, composer, lyricist, like 30 years ago, when I had this idea to actually start a company that would help producers, I didn't know I was going to be doing 150 weekly community gathering podcasts.
Last year, I didn't know I'd be where I am now. It's wild, but you had mentioned COVID and what had happened. The way it impacted all of us was that it caused us to have to think differently. And who would have thought otherwise, right? But here we are.
Big surprise.
Yeah.
But that's, God's like that. He loves surprises.
Yes, she sure does.
Yeah, she does. Monica, so when did you become part of Crossroads, and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So many, many years ago, I was recruited for the board. And I was on the board for about 12 years. And then I stepped off the board because there was a gap in our staffing, and they needed someone with a marketing background to handle the marketing. And so I did some consulting for the theater as their marketing director. And then I left for a while, and I came back and assumed the role of the marketing director. And now I'm the director of operations with oversight of the daily operation and providing the oversight for the resources that needed to produce good theater like we do. And I also still handle the marketing. But I've been a fan and a patron for many, many years.
Is it a path that you expected it to take? I mean, the thing that fascinates me is about, we all think that we're going to go take a certain route and we have a certain goal, and we all wind up going in like detours that take us to better places than we were expecting to be.
Well, I was in corporate America for most of my career. And, I tell friends, this is the second half of my career, and it's great to do something that I enjoy, because so much of our lives are spent working. And I get up there every day and I get to help be a part of great theater. And so I'm just delighted that my career took this very different path. I didn't expect it, but here I am. And so it's just been a great ride the second half of my career.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the development, the path of Crossroads. Rick, so you left us back in Georgetown. I think you stopped about 2 years in when you actually committed to creating the company and being an actual thing, a company. What went into that decision, and did you know how to do it, or you just were figuring it out as you went along?
Wow, that's a great question. First, Bob, can I just say I had a chance to experience some of the people who were on this call too, And I think this is such a beautiful community. I congratulate everybody on this call who, we're all trying, and certainly congratulating you. And the thing I love the most is that TRU, I see you being unlimited. We have to think that way, that, we can't limit ourselves to what the world wants us to. We have to open up to the universe and really begin to think about, well, why am I here on this earth? So, I mean, in answer to your question, I always did my own thing. It was never a question as to whether or not I can do it. My father comes from a whole family of people who did it themselves, right, in Trinidad in the West Indies. And the West Indies is known for that, doing your own, starting your own businesses, doing your own thing. And my mother, who was from Philadelphia, she did the same thing. You're from Philly? All right. So my mother's from Germantown, right? And her father was a barber, and he worked in a bakery in order to raise enough money to start his own barber shop. So I came from that belief that your potential is unlimited. And so coming out of Mason Grove School of the Arts and having worked for 8 years at Rutgers, I mean, undergrad for 4 and then graduate school for another 4. I came out, but all there was out there for Black artists was, roles of a pimp, prostitute, drug dealer, drug addict, what have you. And that was not just in the theater, on the stage, or on TV. It was also in the news. That's all they presented of us. So it was a necessity if we were going to make everything we did up to this point, every investment we made and my parents made into, who we were at that time. It was necessary that we start our own thing and do it our way. That's what we did.
Well, and we're all grateful that you did too.
Mhm.
If somebody out there in our community, or we're going to be showing this on YouTube, this is going to be a podcast, this is going to go out to a wider audience.
Mhm.
What would you tell people about starting a theater company? And was it different back then than it would be now today? Than it would be today?
I'm absolutely sure. I mean, we didn't have the internet, right? We didn't have that. We didn't have. I mean, we barely had fax machines. I don't know. I don't know if we had the level of.
Oh my God! I remember Rexograph machines and mimeograph machines. That's all
Mimeograph machines. I remember mimeograph machines.
Yeah.
I remember whiteout with the typewriters.
Whiteout, yeah, loved it. I drank it all day.
But it's interesting when you look back at that time compared to now. The choices were different. I wouldn't say they were fewer, but they were different. They required commitment. If you were watching TV, right? Keep in mind, this was before the remote control. When the remote control came along, I mean, I'm talking about when we were kids. When the remote control came along, you didn't have to get up to change the channel. But prior to the remote control, you had to make a commitment to that channel, or you had to pay the price by getting up out of your seat and changing it, switching. And I think that
exhausting. It was exhausting.
It was exhausting, but it caused you to think for a second about, well, what are you going to commit to?
Okay, everybody in the room, please mute yourselves. All right.
So I mean, that was. That's a huge difference. People have a lot of choice nowadays in terms of how you communicate. It's different. In terms of what community means, that's different as well. What I would say to people today who are starting off and want to do their own thing, first is, God bless you. Do your own thing. It is so possible to do your own thing. And the second is to just open up to all the possibilities beyond what you imagine. there are ways to, they're just ways to do things that we didn't have back then. We relied a lot on interpersonal relationships, and I think that that's what created community within our communities. It's what made us want to get into that rehearsal hall and be with each other. You don't have to do that in the same way today. And so the second thing I would say to young people is, don't believe the hype. You know, you can't just do theater by, you know, by skirting the fact that theater is about people, about human interaction. Still find the ways to interact, even though there's all this technology there. But do your own thing. Do it, because this is the time. It's begging you. It's begging you for your voice. You know, it's absolutely begging you.
We have a lot of people who are taking control of their paths and doing things and making their opportunities. We always encourage people not to wait around for other people to do it.
Right, right. That's right. That's right. I mean, you don't have to. For example, I know this is going to go on, you know, somewhere else later on YouTube, but in our current time right now, what happened in Tennessee last night, what was the greatest drama you can imagine. And we need to get that out to everybody. We need to do plays about it. We need to do musicals, operas, poems.
Yeah, what happened? Basically, it's what has happened to democracy. Do people dare call what's happening democracy? And some of them are calling it, or pretending that they're Democrat, that they're living in a democracy while they're behaving in ways that are completely anathema to what our basic beliefs are.
And not being able to respect the voice and the power of the room. You know, when the fact that we can meet in the middle, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And if we can't talk about it and you're not going to listen to me, then we shout about it. Well, that's what we have to do. And that's what theater is. We provide a place in theater where every night strangers come together. Strangers, people who don't know each other, come into one room and experience one thing. And they experience it all in different ways. If there are 500 people there are 500 different opinions. But then they're willing to take that opinion and that voice to a conversation. Right. And that's what I think is essential in terms of what we do in the theater. I mean,
if you compare art to politics, art does provide a space where conversation is possible. Politics only allows for shouting.
Yeah. Well, at least nowadays, yes.
Right. These days, yes. Monica, I'm going to turn to you because we haven't really filled in a couple blanks about how did you find your way to Crossroads, and what made you decide that you wanted to be part of this? Oh, you're muted, so you have to unmute yourself.
Unmute, Monica.
I did. So I was in my senior year when I first learned that Crossroads was in New Brunswick. And there was a group of us that went to see a show. I can't remember the show. I just remember those stairs. And it was on Memorial Park. Crossroads was on Memorial Parkway at the time. Mm-hmm. I was so excited about it. I was so excited to see stories that were relatable to my life journey. And so were my friends. But that wasn't the first time. That's not when I fell in love with Black theater, but that's when I got up close to it. I fell in love with Black theater when my mother took me to see, I didn't know Denzel Washington would become Denzel Washington at the time, but he played in A Soldier Story. And I just thought it was the most magnificent show, just seeing people that were sharing experiences that were relatable to me, to my mom, and just I fell in love with Black theater that day. And then I got up close to it at Crossroads, and I stayed close. I attended shows. I worked for J&J at the time. I came to the theater. I supported the theater. And then a friend of mine said, you know, Monica, you have a good network. Would you do some fundraising for us? And I said, sure. And I started a group called the Friends of Crossroads. and we held a fundraiser, and we then became a black tie gala. So I stayed very close to the theater because I just loved being a part of that theater experience that was not like nothing else I ever experienced. And Mom and I did a lot of Broadway shows, and I went to off-Broadway shows, but there was something special and unique about Crossroads. And I think what we're talking about today about Crossroads being a part of the conversation, and being so relevant to what's going on, and being able to offer safe space for actors and playwrights to share their craft and to tell their stories. I just think it's an honor for me to be a part of such an important and culturally relevant theater company.
We're glad you're here, Monica. Very glad.
Um,
She represents the community too.
One of
Uh,
the first people that we honored when many years ago was Philip Rose, who is the producer of Raisin, and we've been conscious of the need for more BIPOC voices. BIPOC is the word we use now. It's just, we could be more specific, but we were aware of that. We also started our producer development and mentorship program with a specific goal of increasing producers of color, because we're sadly lacking. Even though we had a very good start last fall, we had six or seven Black playwrights who were able to have their voices heard on Broadway. We don't know whether that was just a blip or whether it's going to continue. But in the meantime, over the years, you have made a place, a home, an environment for the development of Black voices, and for the opportunity to be able to see shows with relevance to your audiences. We always talk about the universal versus the specific, and all art starts in the specifics. So the miracle that people weren't aware of for a long time was that you could do a show that was specifically about a group that you're not a part of, and you could see yourself in that group. So to what extent do you think that the works that you've developed have had universality, and to what extent are they really specific to your audiences? I suspect that they're universal.
Well, I could say that our name, Crossroads,
There you go.
says that. I mean, this is about bringing people together from different backgrounds, different roads, and meeting at the foot of a baobab tree, and telling a story, sharing a story, and then walking out just a little different than you were when you first came. That's not to define anyone's reaction. It is to accept everyone's reaction to what it is we're doing, and to be honest, as artists. So yeah, totally.
And Rickett, I think you can also talk about Crossroads on a global stage.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Sheila's Day, and we're bringing Fences next year. So maybe just share a little bit about Crossroads from a universal lens, just what we're doing on a global perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, let's get back to the word unlimited, Bob's word. The thing is,
I consciously picked it. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, we are raised as Black and brown children without that in our vocabulary. We are raised with the sense of our limits, unless we are very careful and we have the right parents. But how often do you have that? And the right teachers? How often do you have that? So there's so many children who are raised based on what they see on TV or the stories they're told, and because some of us are, like I said, my father's from Trinidad and my mother is Black from the US. They never wanted us to confine who it is we were. They always saw us as global citizens. And so, you know, I carried that forward into theater, realizing that as Black people in this country, our roots span the globe. And so as a theater, we can show that. And if we show that through plays like Monica mentioned that we've done and created in collaboration with South African artists and with Caribbean artists and with Nigerian artists and artists from the UK and Canada, we can start to see ourselves as Black and Brown people connected to Black and Brown people from all over the globe. If we didn't do that, we would be left to define ourselves as victims in this country, because our history here is that of being victimized. And the relationship we've had with white people, for the most part, as it is told in history, sets white people as victimizers. We could change all of that. We need to change all of that. And the only way to do that is to see us as part of the globe. And when we do that, we are not defined as victims. We don't walk as victims. We walk as proud people who have something to share with everybody and a desire to listen to everybody as well.
Well, I love what you're saying. I love everything that you're saying. How easy or how hard was it to find your audiences when you first started out? I mean, Monica came in as with marketing, so
Right.
to some extent, Monica, you were part of the effort to be more visible to more people. How was that journey for you? And also today, what percentage of your audience is BIPOC, and what percentage is the white theater goer? I'm sure you must have support to some degree.
Oh, absolutely. I think our audiences are more diverse than people might suspect. But part of our responsibility is to cultivate relationships with the next generation of theater goers. And
Oh
so,
boy, that's a very important. We talk about this all the time. We don't have this culture. Our culture does not support the development of artists. It's just education. The first thing that gets always cut is the arts, and it's so crucial. We need to find some ways. And we've been talking about political, being more political. So the need for many of us to be more political and really get the word out that we need arts in schools, and we need to develop artists and the interest in the arts and the supportive culture at a very young age. But I'm sorry, you go back to where you were.
no,
You hit a nerve with me.
and so as part of that, our programming also reflects wanting to invite more people in. We have a beautiful show coming up called Star Child. It is written by a wonderful, talented artist who was the former musical director for Beyonce. And it tells her journey. And she explains it coming into the light, having had her light dimmed as she was growing up because circumstances got in the way. And I said, who should see it? She said, everyone should see it. And little Black girls, you know, teenagers who are just at a crossroads, Black women, brown women, white women, all because all of us have been on this type of journey at some point in our lives. And so I think the theater that we're producing now really does reflect our mission. And that is to expand our office. And I love the way Rick explains Crossroads and, you know, the symbol Crossroads and what it means, because we have been not only an incubator for talent, but also we bring people into the conversation from very diverse backgrounds. Part of my job now is to make sure that folks keep coming, that we do get younger audiences. We do expose people who have not grown up with theater, have so many different entertainment options. We invite them in and we find creative ways to do that. Partnering with the public schools. We don't want cost to be a barrier to seeing good theater. So we find creative ways to have corporate sponsors underwrite some of the tickets so that we can invite underserved people from the communities that are nearby into Crossroads. So that's a big part of my mission, is to make sure that cost is never a barrier to seeing Black theater, and that we make a very conscious effort to invite that next generation in, because
Yeah.
those are the folks that will sustain us.
Well,
You know, I
wish you
just want,
success in that.
Bob, you know, I feel like if we had one huge wish for what theater would look like in the future, it would be that theater was free. It would be that there was no barrier. I mean, why do we have to charge? We have to charge because we have to pay for it. But if we found a different way to do it, it would be amazing.
Government
there'd be
government subsidies wouldn't hurt. I mean,
Well,
we have
government
the
or-
very poorly funded in this country, very poorly funded.
Yeah, we are. But Bob, I just also want to say that, you know, to what Monica was saying about young people, you know, somebody like Divinity Rocks, who grows up, she not only became Beyonce's bass musical director, but she was a bass player. She is a bass player. And when you have a young girl growing up, you always think, well, bass players are that's what men do, you know, that's what boys do. And she said, no, this is what I want to do. And it was somebody who told her, you should try this, you know. Somebody must have told Walter Robinson, you know, that you can be a composer of opera. You know, I mean, somebody had to have told you that you could do what you're doing. Somebody must have told each of us something, a message that was set in motion by you know, by the spirit, by the energy of the universe, and we just don't listen all the time, or there's all kinds of, you know, interference, right?
Yep.
There's huge interference that young people are going through right now. But if we could just channel them in to what we have to say in the theater. I mean, imagine you go into the theater and you turn off your cell phone. I mean, you turn off your cell phone and you are forced to be with yourself. That's the beauty of the moment of silence and the moment of purity that exists in the theater. I don't want to lose that with people, and I don't want that to be limited only to the people who can afford it.
So I do want to pick up a thread from earlier. I want to basically ask you how shutdown changed you, because you indicated that you're in a very different place now, and you credited some of that to having gone through shutdown. So how did you respond? How did you pivot? We talk about the good old COVID pivot. What happened? What did you guys do? I mean, I'm aware of some of it because I'm on your emailing list. I hear about everything you do.
Well, Monica was actually the one who, Monica and I were talking. I was getting ready to do a play called Freedom Rider in 2020. We were days away from rehearsals beginning. All right. And I was not the artistic director at the time. And Marshall Jones, who had held Crossroads together for a long period of time, had been leaving. So I said, Marshall, wait a minute now, you're leaving, but who's gonna produce Freedom Rider, right? And I knew Monica was there, but we didn't have an idea of what was going to happen going forward. And then COVID hit. All right. So it kind of made us look at something different after we got over the fact that, oh, well, okay, so we're going to, Monica, what did we talk about? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Right, we're going to delay for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing. 2 weeks, 4 weeks,
Yeah.
Memorial Day, 4th of July,
Yeah.
Labor Day, next year, this year, any year.
Yeah. And then we realized that we have a real treasure chest of past performances. And we also had relationships with other theater companies literally around the globe. And we decided to come up with an online platform that showed classics from Crossroads past, as well as new works in collaboration with other theater companies. and that was Rick's doing. And we created this wonderful place to show theater, to do readings, to show classics. The Colored Museum, we did encore performance of the WNET special. And it was such a big hit, we exceeded our own expectations. At one point, we had 40,000 consumers tuning into our online platform. We created a separate product. So you didn't go to Crossroads and click on Crossroads website. We created a brand extension, At Home with Crossroads. And it was just a huge hit, and we stayed connected that way. But to Rick's credit, the relationships with the other theater companies, London and in South Africa, bringing them in. We had talkbacks, we had just beautiful theater online, and it was an amazing experience, and it extended our reach. And this is what online does, right? You can have a global audience, and it's a hugely successful product. Rick, maybe you want to talk about the collaborations.
Well, I hear you. I think what it did was allowed us the opportunity to also bring the artists from the past to the present, to be able to talk about their shows. So we did a show way back in the day that Andre de Shields starred in, and he wrote. It was called Harlem Nocturne. So I brought Andre back, and he and I sat there discussing Harlem Nocturne while watching excerpts of it, and just that perspective from 2020 or 2021 going back to then. Same thing with Melba Moore. We did the same with Melba Moore, just sitting and talking. We were able to present collaborations and conversation with the artists from the Market Theatre in Johannesburg, a theater group in Mumbai, and a children's theater in Seattle. And these are not things that we so easily are able to do live, but we were forced to find that. The challenge that we have now is that now that we're back live, how do we keep that other stuff too? And that's the challenge we're facing now. I think all of us are, but I definitely think that there's an important role that online plays to being able to move our collaborations as artists to a different level. And really, that's why we're here, to collaborate, to work with other artists and to hear what they have to say from all over the world.
So basically, COVID was ultimately positive for you. So it's changed you, and you're still defining it. But it sounds like
it's changed all of us. I mean, it's in different ways. It absolutely has. Yeah, it has.
And I think the secret that I'd like to share with people, which isn't much of a secret, is basically when life hands you things, you can run away, you can hide, you can throw the covers over your head, you can do all sorts of things, or you can embrace it and say, okay, this is what I have. How can I make the most of it? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you did. You just said, this is where we are. Although you had the same reality perspective that I had, which is, it's only going to be 2 weeks.
I think that as producers, we have to be forced to a place like that. We try our best to change it. God sends us something and we say, okay, I'm going to change it up a little bit. That goes back to our days with Sophocles and believing that we could actually change fate, that we could turn that around. And we do that, until we can't. And then it's like, okay, all right, fine, I'll cut out my eye. But you find a way. Well, I'm going to Oedipus there.
I know where you were.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just saying that then what you do is you find that your other eye sees a whole different world of things, and be open to it, pay attention to it. And that's what I think we're trying to do right now as a world, pay attention to
Well, some of
what
us
those
are.
years, well, to pay attention to what those worlds, there's so many people now, Bob, who don't want to work. Through COVID, they decided to retire. God bless them for that. Or decided, well, I don't want to go.
This is me in retirement.
Right. Well, do we have to go into the office? Do we have to do rehearsals in the same way we used to? It's just something we have to pay attention to. That's all.
Well, I actually find it fascinating, the whole world that's opened up to so many of us because we've been forced to embrace virtual. I mean, it's not a punishment. It's not a punishment from God. It's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. Tell that to our unions.
Yeah, that's another one.
No, right.
Okay, so I'm gonna just tell the room. I want you to put questions and comments into the chat. And Owen, do we have any things that we need to ask that haven't been dealt with yet?
We have a question from John Ewing asking, does Crossroads engage in enhancement deals for projects headed to Broadway?
Yes, we do. We haven't recently, but we have. We're always open to enhancement because we have to work together, profit and nonprofit, and we always have. Crossroads has taken shows like It Ain't Nothing But the Blues, for example, into New York.
With Eric Krebs.
Well, we first brought it in with to the New Victory Theater in New York. We'd created it and we had collaborated with the San Diego Rep and Alabama Shakespeare Festival. We created this piece and then brought it in to the New Victory Theater, where Crossroads was a resident at the time. And it happened that Eric Krebs was sitting in the row right behind Bernie at Lincoln Center, and Bernie and Cora Khan were talking about how, wow, maybe this should go to Lincoln Center. And then Eric leaned in and said, well, and then it went from there. And we also have done shows, another one with Eric. We did Paul Robeson starring Avery Brooks. And Eric took that into the Golden Theater in New York. We've taken Sheila's Day in from South Africa. The answer, yes, absolutely yes. If we're able to create the work in a very pure way, and we're able to be supported by folks who believe in that work and can take it farther, please be my guest. Absolutely, let's talk.
But the underlying message that I get from you is that it's all about relationships. You are a master of creating relationships. You seem to be a genius at it.
I don't know about that, Bob, but I know that relationship. If we didn't like relationships, we wouldn't be in the theater.
All right.
Right.
I guess. Okay, we'll go with that.
I mean, that's why we come in. We come in to work with people in a room,
but you seem to find partnerships. You seem to be very good at finding partners who want to work with you, and not everybody can do that.
Yeah,
but it sounds like you've been repeatedly successful at it.
Well, I think it probably comes from believing that you be true to yourself first, and if you are, then others will follow. Being able to just do that. Just being able to envision something that might not have been envisioned before, dream dreams that haven't been done before, and recognize that people want to be part of that too. People want to be part of that which requires courage. And the more people in the room who have that courage and want to go with it, even though it's undefined, the better it is for all of us. I totally believe in that. And I think that I've always been open to the collaboration, because I think what's necessary is the conversation, regardless of what field you're in.
Thank you. Again, wise words. I appreciate hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give a broader like a broader look at the place of BIPOC voices in American theater right now. I said earlier that we had a encouraging blip last fall, because we had a lot of shows written by and produced by Black artists and professionals.
Written and directed by, not
Written,
produced.
directed. I mean, no, we had a lot of almost a lot of those were like Ron Simons produced a couple things. I know Ron he's a friend of mine, and a lot of these plays had more. There were more Black producers present.
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
So where do you think we are right now? Do you and how have you been serving your audiences, and how have you kept your theater company growing and continuing to get the support that you need? I mean, we need audiences. That we do what we do, and if we don't have people out watching it, it's like, why are we doing this? So,
all right, this will be a little controversial.
Okay.
And I'm glad we established that I enjoy collaboration with people. So,
okay.
That being said,
that given, all right.
That given, when the We See You White American Theaters movement started,
2020. It was like, I think it was early. I think it was May. I think it was just about around the time of shutdown.
Yeah, and I remember being asked to sign the petition, the letter that was going to the New York Times, and I couldn't figure out why I was hesitant until I did, and it was not because I didn't believe in them, and not because I didn't believe in what was being stated, because I did. But if I had to sign something that says "We see you, white American theaters," and yet I haven't spent my life looking, then wouldn't there be some hypocrisy there? In other words, I don't spend my time looking at white theater, white American theater. I do my own. And I don't think that mine is lesser than anybody else's, just like I never thought that the Negro Leagues baseball was any less than the American League baseball. And yet there were always the conversations about, well, don't you want this? Don't you want to do that? Of course I want to take shows to Broadway, of course. But I don't want to start at Broadway. I want to start with my own vision. I want to start in a world that is my own, that plays my own music, that feeds actors with my own food, that allows us to be who we are. And then from there, it can go out. I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities that existed on Broadway last year and the year before. And I do hope it continues. And I think it will, because as you said, there are more Black producers. But there are Black institutions across this country that do not get that same support, that do not get that same focus and light. And so I would rather not spend my time focused on seeing white America. I'd rather spend my focus on seeing myself.
That's amazing.
But that's nothing against anybody else.
We see you white American theaters. I think was necessary. I think it had to happen. I think that there had been too many false starts. There had been too many false hopes over the years, and we had lots of powerful people in theaters saying yes, we must have more Black voices. We must see more people of color. And it wasn't happening. I mean, it was like the last straw, in the same way that George Floyd was the last straw politically. That we were in shutdown. Finally, we saw, in a way that we couldn't look away, what was happening in our culture. And there was we just didn't have there was no place to hide. We had to face it. I think we're still not there. I think we all thought we were going to make much more progress after George Floyd than we actually did. Just Tennessee last night is just a disgusting example of how we're still mired in hate and well, white
Right.
privilege or whatever you want to call it.
But Arkansas happened also.
And so, well, that's true. And Wisconsin also happened.
Oh, yes, Wisconsin. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wisconsin.
The Supreme Court. Yeah, I mean, it happens. It's the arc, right? That is not.
Evolution is so slow.
It goes like disto, Bob. Right? It doesn't. It's jagged sometimes.
Yeah.
But I still believe in where we're headed.
But I do think that was a moment. We've seen white American theater and George Floyd, and it was a confluence of things that were happening at the time, where a lot of us thought we had already seen, and we realized that we really hadn't seen as much as we thought we had, and we're seeing a lot more. And God was basically sending us to our room for a timeout, and basically saying to all of us, you got to think about things now. You got to think about things. There was nothing else for us to do. We had to sit in our rooms and we had to think. And I think that was intentional. I think God meant it.
I think God meant it, but I think if God were truthful, God would also say we got to fight for it. We got to fight because, Tennessee showed that.
Yeah.
And even the when you look at all of the literature being taken off of our shelves, the books, that shows it. You look at what's the play that was banned from one of the schools, Putnam County, right? I mean, we're reaching a point where people are standing up and saying, I don't want this around my kids anymore. And that's wrong. It is so wrong, but it is now a fight. It is a fight. And I think, Bob, I think we need to stop bringing, slingshots to the party. I think it's a bigger fight.
Oh, well, I hope there's a solution because it just frustrates me so much. I can't imagine how you guys would feel, but I mean, I'm frustrated at how we're as Kate McLeod is saying, we're stuck in quicksand.
We're stuck in quicksand. Yes, we are. But we have to also think about our ancestors and the fact that our parents went through this stuff too, and our grandparents went through this stuff too. And I think about Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis they were one of our best couples at Crossroads ever, and I always look at them, and the memory of them when I think about it, and I think, they could have done anything they wanted, but they stood up for what they believed in, and it cost them in their careers, but believe it, they were themselves all the way through, and their royalty. And I think that we have people like that who went through those jagged times like we're going through now, and they made it a little better. And we have to as well.
I forgot I muted myself. A little better, a little better, a little better. Like I said, evolution is frustratingly slow. That's why you said we have to bring guns to the party. It's revolution.
I didn't say guns. I said just stop bringing slingshots.
Just okay. And I shouldn't say guns. I don't want to go on the record as advocating guns in any way.
Right.
But it's just bigger, more stronger armor of some sort. Yeah. So Owen, I know that well, Walter, did you have a question? Did you want to say something? I never know what to do when somebody doesn't put their question into the chat. They
I just wanted to say something, Rick.
Hey, Walter.
Listen to this. I just want to say this to you. Maybe I'll put on my video here.
Hey, you are.
Yeah. So listen, Rick. What you said about the Negro baseball leagues and the Black community during the time of segregation, there was a richness there in theater, in baseball. Do you know what I mean? Understand? And there was a sense of unity and contentment. You knew everybody on the block. There was the Black barbershop, the Black cleaners, the Black church. all these institutions
Mhm,
that were fabulous nurturers of us. You understand?
mhm,
So
mhm.
ironically, when the the division was done away with, and there are these opportunities that opened up, I think some of that got distilled, and people got lost in this world, thinking that maybe these upper class Caucasian oriented goals were a priority, rather than some of the things that we knew were very powerful to us.
Mhm.
So I see that in what you're saying. I just want to say, in terms of my journey, because I don't want to take up the time here. I about 25 years ago, I connected with you on Look What a Wonder. Okay.
Mhm. I remember.
And
Yeah.
and it turned into a disaster, not to your fault or my fault, but in terms of the co-writer Oyamo, who refused to collaborate, and he just wrote the script independently and sent it in the email to me. You know what I mean?
Mm, mm,
So that
mm.
did that. But here's the thing: God had it that a Broadway producer named Fred Zolo optioned the piece, and over 2 years tried to get it to Broadway. Okay, watch this. Watch God. Okay, it failed. So it's set in my computer for 8 years.
Walter, this is deep weeds. Just
Yeah,
just help,
listen to this.
help us get through it.
Okay, yeah, listen. So it's set there for 8 years, and then I sent it into the New York Music Theater Festival, and it was chosen out of 400 international submissions and given an off-Broadway premiere. So here's the final thing that I want to say, Rick. Now, that same producer, Fred Zolo, who just co-produced Till with Barbara Broccoli and Preston Holmes, wants to option Look What a Wonder today.
Mm. Oh, that's wonderful, Walter.
And listen to
Congratulations.
this, and listen to
Yeah.
this. And we're connected to NJPAC. One of my
Uh-huh.
co-producers has met with John Schreiber, and I'd
Okay.
love to reconnect
So
with you
so
and
Walter,
see if
this is
we
all
could
very
get you in the loop.
personal. This is
Well,
very
Yeah,
personal. And
let's do it.
let's do
so
it. I'll email you, man.
okay.
Okay, thanks.
So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Persistence.
so Owen, were there any other questions or comments that we wanted to ask people to share?
Not really. If anyone has anything that they would like to ask, feel free to raise a hand or type it in chat.
I mean, we covered a lot of territory, I
Mhm.
think. The one last question I wanted to ask you, I started asking before, is what are the secrets, Monica and Rick? What are the secrets to actually getting audiences in, to particularly getting Black audiences into shows?
Well,
This is for all of us who have to
well, I
promote our
I
work.
think we're all starting to still trying to figure it out. I mean, there is this post-COVID consumer behavior is very, very different. There are just so many more options. Our behaviors changed during COVID. We spent more time with Netflix and different entertainment options. So there's just no one formula. One thing that we have done that's effective, it is bringing in community partners. And I mentioned corporate sponsors to become ticket sponsors. We have good community partners like the NAACP, some of our local churches that, there's key influencers within our community. So for us, it's really more grassroots than anything. Social media doesn't do it for us the way it might be for some other theaters. We really have to touch our customers. Our group sales is very active. We calling customers. We have audience development where we call our members. Our audience development person called our members, our senior members during COVID, just to have a personal touch. I think it's really more grassroots for us, but we are actively engaged in bringing in different organizations to the theater. Selling in bulk is easier for us than than individual ticket sales. We were very effective at doing that for Chicken and Biscuits. We sold out 7 out of 10 shows in December.
And that's an interest right there. That's of interest because Chicken and Biscuits was the first of the plays that opened on Broadway last fall. How do you think your production fared compared to what they did on Broadway? Did you feel like you got something that was a little bit more accessible, or it had a mixed reaction? I know when it opened.
Yeah,
but I was glad to see that you were doing it.
Yeah, the audiences loved it. A lot of I think what our success that second week was because audience were telling friends, family, you got to go see this. It's so much fun.
Good old word of mouth.
We love word of mouth.
Oh yeah.
And I think it worked we were open during the Christmas holidays. I was a little concerned. Well, will people come? And they came. They came Christmas Eve. They came New Year's Eve.
Mhm.
And it was just great to see the theater packed with people. But one of our partners was a very high profile church that had 200 tickets that we brought in PNC Bank, and we gave 200 tickets away to the community through this church. And it was and that helped get the word out because they advertised it on their website and they have 10,000 members. So, grassroots is really important part of what we do.
And Archaic Arena is pointing out the Chicken and Biscuits has done very well in regional theaters around the country since its Broadway production. I was very disappointed. I thought it closed way too soon. I was sorry, especially since I wanted to see Norm Lewis. I love Norm.
Norm is, yeah, but it was also during COVID, and it was a tough time.
It was.
I think that we're trying to get back to where we're doing more shows per year, because you have to do the blockbusters like a Chicken and Biscuits in order to do the shows that are very risky. The reason we're here is to do the risk, take the risk, and so I used to when we were doing 6 shows a year, I would sandwich the risky shows, the new plays, with others I know would bring people in. One of those plays that we sandwiched in there that was a risk was called The Colored Museum.
Oh,
right. Another risk was Spunk, both by George C. Wolfe.
So are you saying the Color Museum started at Crossroads? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it started at Crossroads.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's iconic.
The world premiere was at Crossroads, and George Wolfe, people didn't know him, and what happened was we were part of a play. There was some kind of competition that was going on nationally, and writers were able to submit to that, and it was called the CBS Dramatist Foundation something or other, and we were one of the theaters, and we were the theater George Wolfe wanted to do his Colored Museum, and so we did.
Well, you guys are legendary. I mean, I'm honored to have you on today. I'm also amazed because I've been running after you for so many years, Rick.
I'm so sorry, Bob. I really, but the main thing is that I'm here, number one, and also that I am amazed by all of these wonderful people who are part of your community, and I think that's what we need to see, continue in the American theater.
I very much believe in community, and I'm all about that. So thank you for that. And I'm going to just thank you guys for being with me today. I'm going to say a few parting words. I don't know if you can stay a couple minutes just to meet people, but if you can, that'd be great. If you can't, it's okay. And I just want to say to my viewers out there that if you want to be in the room and if you want to be part of the conversation and ask your questions and meet these great people that come on, email me. It's not hard. Just email me. TRUNLTD@AOL.com, and just say Zoom me. Or actually, I would love it if you put Zoom in your subject header in a way that makes me laugh. But but it's just, it'll be okay. Just email me, and we'll put you on the list, and you'll get invited every week, and you can be part of this. We do this as a community service. We've been doing it. We started off never intending to charge anything. We just wanted people to be in the room. But now that we're going back live, we have more expenses, and it's costing money to run our company. So if you don't mind giving us a little donation, that would be great. It's TRU Donate, TRUDonate.com, TRUDonate.com, and Joe Nelms is right there in the chat for everybody that's here to see it. Come back next week. Come back the weeks next week. A lot of you will want to be here next week, because next week we're going to talk about show is going to be called Let's Talk About Readings, and I've got 3 general managers. Well, actually 3 producers and general managers coming on who are going to talk about how to do an effective reading and what you need to do in order for a producer to be interested in going to your reading. So I know that's a thing that a lot of you want to talk about. So join us next week and in the weeks to come. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.